So how good is Conor Benn? Well, to be honest, nobody's quite sure where we stand with the old destroyer these days. To sum it up, his career sort of went a bit like, okay, yeah, alright, not too bad. Oh, that's good, yep, okay, nice. Oh, fucking Paynard. Oh, that's him, fuck then. Oh, no, hold up, okay, blimey. Right, okay, fuck me, have a look at this, oi. Eggs. Yeah, and since then, amongst his quest to prove his innocence, he's bounced back with a couple of wins as well. So we'll talk about them in a minute, but in the lead up to this nostalgic, massive, and let's face it, rather fucking jinxed Eubank Jr fight, the question remains, what is this man's level? And the other question is, why is Eubank Sr so sure that this fight don't happen? Bloody hell, anyone see him at the Harlem Eubank fight? He said, don't get your hopes up, bruv, it's not happening, I'm fucking telling you. So interesting stuff. I mean, I disagree because there's too much at stake this time, but we shall see. Anyway, let's rewind for a hot minute. Growing up in Mallorca for a number of years, it wasn't until he moved to Australia with the family that he picked up the gloves and decided to give it a go. At around 15 years old, him and old Nigel had a spar with his father trying to ascertain if his son had the minerals he himself always had, and to young Ben's credit, even with Nigel apparently not holding back, Conor showed that he certainly did. Then, whilst honing his craft in the land down under, it was straight onto the amateur circuit, in which he racked up a respectable 20 wins from 22 fights. Not too bad, nothing like some of them absolute animals like Golovkin, Beterbiev, Bivol, Usyk, Loma racking up 300 plus fights, but either way, not too shabby. And then it was back to Blighty, where he linked up with his long-term trainer Tony Sims, who interestingly used to spar Nigel in preparation for his fights back in the 90s, and before he knew it, the Ben train was full steam ahead, turning pro at just 19 years old and signing up with Eduardo of Matchroom. Then upon a first round knockout against Boyanov in 2016, he was off to a blinding start.
Yep, the nerves will be probably gone now. Now he'll be doing what he does, what he enjoys doing. And he's very attack-minded, isn't he? Really wants to get this over with.
Oh yeah, this fella's had enough already. That's done.
So yes, old Boyanov ended up literally running away. I don't think this is the right backing spot for you, boyo, bruv. But anyway, from our first glimpse, it was clear he had the speed, it was clear he had the tenacity, and to top it all off, he showed reflections of that brawler mentality his father was so famous for. Now, that first year as a pro, it was quite clear Eddie was easing him in gradually. He went on to have 6 fights against, with all due respect, the kind of lower level journeyman, and I can only imagine this was a recommendation by Nigel and Tony, who knew he needed more time and needed to learn his craft on the job. Probably about right really, because he did seem to make a lot of mistakes. He did seem to get caught fairly often, even at this level, and so much so that in December that year, just a handful of months into his career, he got walloped and broke his jaw. Stories differ on how this happened, but apparently it was a combination of sparring John Ryder and O'Hara Davies. Either way, after fighting almost every month in 2016, he was now out the ring for a frustrating 7 months. So, upon his return, he was back with a bang, 4 solid knockouts in 4 months, all within the first 3 rounds. He was noticeably improving, looking sharper fight by fight, but still, the level was pretty much as low as it could get. You could see quite a difference though. Here we see him in the Sonado fight in 2017, almost a year to the day from the Ducker fight in 2016, and he's clearly a lot more aggressive and a lot more confident in his work. However, that confidence was about to be dented when an unknown French journeyman rocked up to the York Hall in December 2017. Now, it's not as if he even had an extensive journeyman record or anything. He was only 5 wins and 4 losses at the time, so on paper the matchmakers must have thought, ah yes, another easy night for Conor. But of course, that turned out to not be the case.
Real experience for Ben, but going over to America and in the right hand! Floors him in the first minute of the first round! What a level higher, much higher than this. And Ben trying to get his own right hands going, but back comes Payno again! And Ben just slips on the advertising hoarding, but he's being counted by Bob Williams.
That wasn't a knockdown, Adam. That definitely wasn't a knockdown. Just got tripped on his lead foot.
So as mentioned, he was prone to making mistakes and getting caught, young Ben, but on this night it nearly cost him dearly at a level much lower than expected. Having said that, on a positive note, he showed a marvellous set of bollocks and plenty of grit and desire to win, so fair play to the man for that. But ultimately, how Bob Williams gave it 57-54 in favour of Conor, I'll never fucking know. Payno won the fight all day long, and if there'd been 3 judges ringside, guarantee Conor's name wouldn't have been read out. Anyway, it was a serious wake-up call, and when he went home that night with a face like a great big fucking football, he knew things had to change if he were to compete with the big boys. I mean, never mind world level, this was barely English level opposition really, so of course major improvements were needed and a rematch was definitely needed so as to right the wrong to the fans, and after a tune-up 4 months later against Chris Truman, he jumped back in against the heavy-handed Frenchman.
If he can't beat Pena or whatever his name is, we'll give up boxing. That's my opinion. If you can't beat him...
Is that what you would say to him if you can't?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I ain't mucking around. He ain't mucking around. If you can't beat him, move on. Put your thing down and go back to painting and decorating.
So personally, around this time, I'd watched his whole career and I thought, well, for a start, he is double exciting. I love watching him fight, but ability-wise, I thought I can see him competing for a British title, but European level, well, maybe, depending on the opponent. However, world level, no chance. I thought he was kind of comparable to the likes of Sam Eggington, Ted Cheeseman, but not quite as good as, say, Bradley Skeet or Josh Kelly at the time. But I was double interested to see him lock horns with that British level when the time came. But as we know it never actually came. Yes, after the Paynard rematch, you would have thought that he'd be ready to start competing for the English title at least, but instead it was back to business as usual really against the low-level fighters. He had a long layoff after Paynard 2 in July 2018, not fighting again until April 2019 when he returned against the Loadmore journeyman. Basically, okay, their records looked a bit more respectable on paper, but let's face it, their ability weren't too different. And Conor cruised through his 3 opponents in 2019 before the old Rona smashed us all to fucking bits. More inactivity ensued for a whole year this time. Then when he did return, he finally did step up a level against the very durable Formella, whose only loss at the time was a decision loss to Sean Porter.
And again, squeezes another one through. Yeah, Formella just not settling yet.
And these are sharp jabs from Conor Benn. Good head movement again, slipping inside the jab, looking for that left hook to the body. Ben, who's a little bit more unorthodox, you know, carries the left hand a little bit low, more of a relaxed style, shooting the jab up from the hip. It's more difficult to read.
Good body shots from Ben. 10 knockouts, but rather a padded record, certainly early doors for him, as the nose continues to draw blood, and good uppercut in there.
You know, we've followed his career closely. I've watched him. I've liked his attitude, and I've seen big improvements. Now, to get those big improvements, you're not just working hard on the running track. You're not just hitting the bag and doing the round. You're spending hours shadowboxing.
So this was a funny one, really. Even though we wanted to see him in some blinding domestic dust-ups competing for an English and British title, in a way, on paper, he'd kind of superseded that level by beating Formella. However, off paper, let's be honest, some of the domestic and rising talent at the time would have given him a lot more competition. I'm talking about the likes of Kelly, Marku, Eko Esserman, Chris Congo, Chris Jenkins, the list goes on. I do think at least one of them would have beaten him, but of course, Conor just managed to bypass them all. Fair dues though, it would turn out to be a rather good move when he excelled in his mainstream breakout performance against the tough Samuel Vargas behind closed doors.
Trying to make an early impression on Samuel Vargas. Wonderful uppercut. And look at this from Conor Benn early in the first round. And Vargas in all sorts of trouble. And it's been stopped.
So yes, this was the fight that changed everything. This was the moment we all went, wow, this man is a serious problem. I mean, I don't know who he's talking to after though, because there was no fucker there. He's just giving it the big one to a load of COVID doctors. But regardless, the majority of us all of a sudden jumped on the Conor Benn is world-class bandwagon. And how could you not? Looking at the speed, the shot selection, the power, the ferocity, everything was outstanding and clearly problematic for anyone. Then after a points win against Granados, who to be fair had no interest in engaging, Conor went on to produce something equally as explosive against former world champion Chris Algieri. Former world champion, but a little bit washed up. Let's have it right.
Well, Algieri might just be having a look. Oh, good left hook to the body from Conor Benn again. One thing he didn't do was go to the body early, and so far Conor Benn is going to the body. And then he's letting those punches go, just like that. Good uppercut on the inside.
And as his dad Nigel was saying, not to follow Algieri around the ring, although having success with the right hand to the body himself, as his guard is pierced this time by Conor Benn. Brilliant combination. Benn really beginning to unleash now, really putting the feet and the whole body behind these punches here. No arm shots from...
It's been a phenomenal rise. Oh, good 1-2 and he's down!
Left-right combination, and it is all over in an instant. He was waiting for the opportunity. He picked his opportunity. The left jab, the right hand over the top.
So again, an absolutely blinding performance, but we did all know that Algieri was kind of a shell of himself at the time, and most annoyingly, this fight took place around 10 months after Avanesian beat Josh Kelly for the European title. That should have been the fight instead. Avanesian versus Ben was the acid test that would tell us all we needed to know, but Team Ben once again just didn't show any interest whatsoever.
Avanesian straight on him, and look at this from the Russian. And he's just coming up on it, Josh Kelly. The legs went down again, and Alan Booth throw the towel in.
And then the fan frustrations grew even higher when yet another brink of retirement fighter became his next opponent in Chris Van Heerden.
Quite relaxed in there. It's the right hook from Van Heerden. The left uppercut, right hook from Van Heerden every time.
The South African measuring the shots as Ben charges forward. Another good right hand from Ben, and this time Van Heerden attempts to hold on. A different kind of challenge presented by a southpaw. Only the second that Conor Benn has faced in his career. Big right hand. So often the best shot against a southpaw, and Van Heerden is badly hurt and goes down with still 2 minutes to go in the second round.
So yes, another good looking performance, but in terms of Van Heerden, once again he just didn't really pose much of a threat. In a way though, you gotta give the matchmaking some credit, because these fights really flattered Conor and a lot of hype was built around him off the back of them. However, it just left us wondering, can he really hack it at world level? We know he's very good, but how good? There was simply just not enough to go on due to him not fighting any fresh competition. And then of course he was going to fight Eubank, but it all turned a bit omelette-y and everything got fucked. I'm not going to get into that debacle now, but yes, naturally this is where many put 2 and 2 together and said, right, now it makes sense. That's how he's gone from the dismal Paynard performance to the destructive force that demolished Algieri and Vargas, the old performance enhancing drugs. I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say I jumped to that conclusion as well. How could you not? 1 minute he's struggling with journeyman, the next minute he looks like he could be world class. Unfortunately for him, 2 failed tests have clouded everything that this man has ever done. Now look, obviously no one really knows whether he cheated or not, and even if they did, no one could know if it was a long-term thing or just a one-off. Now whether you correlate the destructive power and highlight real knockouts to the failed drug tests or not, that's simply up to you. Obviously people have done, because upon his return we've seen 2 fights with no knockouts and nowhere near the same destruction. I mean, they have both been at light middleweight though, so maybe that's got something to do with it, fuck knows. But regardless, the bottom line is he is tough, he is relentless like his dad, he has got good ring craft, his IQ is solid, and his boxing is now at a high level. A level we never thought he'd reach back around 2018. Ultimately, he's certainly European, fringe world level, but only time will tell if he's full world level. Personally, do I think he can beat any of the top welterweights like Boots, Stanionis, Barrios, Haney? Not really, I just can't see it. But I do see him having good fights against people like Josh Taylor, Usserman, Crocker, Donovan. Them fights would be cracking. Hopefully they end up happening after the Eubank fight. And then finally, I'll end it on this. Regardless of the drug problems, Matchroom have done wonders for Ben, building him up to be what he is, but I do think skipping that invaluable British level and glossing over them very hungry fighters who were chasing greatness, skipping them in favour of over-the-hill former good fighters is going to come back to bite him very soon. And that's that. Let me know your thoughts. Au revoir for now.